The day after the wedding, still feeling groggy, I made my way to the living room, only to see my husband's sister, Emily, in the hallway. A little further down were my in-laws, James and Linda. Good morning, Emily.
Silent.
Silent.
However, neither Emily nor my in-laws said a word, even though they clearly noticed me. Good morning, James. Good morning, Linda.
Emily, are you heading out today?
Yeah, I won't be home for dinner.
As expected, they didn't respond to my greeting, and Linda started a conversation with Emily instead. That was the beginning of them ignoring me. A month passed, and one day, James collapsed and had to be rushed to the hospital. His surgery was a success. However, he would live with a physical disability.
With Grace here, there's absolutely nothing to worry about when it comes to caregiving, right?
I was stunned by Emily's words, especially after she had spent so much time ignoring me. It seemed Linda felt the same way as Emily. But I had no intention of letting my in-laws push me around anymore. The next day, I silently left their house with my husband, Sean. My name is Grace Thomas. I'll be turning 30 this year. Currently, I work as a care manager at a nursing facility. It had always been my dream to work in elder care. The reason lies in the environment I grew up in as a child. Because my parents were busy with work, I spent every day with my beloved grandmother. She even took me along when she went to local senior center meetings or had tea with her friends. Thinking back now, it must have been hard for her to relax with a child tagging along. But I was surrounded by kind elderly people, and before I knew it, I wanted to be someone who could help them. After graduating from vocational school, I made my dream come true and started working as a caregiver. I passed both the certified caregiver and care manager exams and have been leading a fulfilling life. However, about 3 years ago, my beloved grandmother passed away. In my grief, a friend from my vocational school days introduced me to a man, thinking it might cheer me up. That man was Sean Thomas, 2 years younger than me. It felt as if my grandmother had brought us together, and Sean healed my heart, helping me gradually regain my smile. Our relationship progressed smoothly, and about 2 weeks ago, he proposed to me, and now we're set to get married. While I'm enjoying a very happy life, I do have one concern. It seems that Sean's family doesn't like me. However, they didn't dislike me from the start. I remember the day we announced our engagement and I went to meet them.
Nice to meet you. I'm Sean's mom, Linda. Come on in.
Linda greeted me warmly, and I felt relieved.
Hi, I'm his sister, Emily. Wow, Sean, you really found someone amazing.
Emily seemed to like me right away and welcomed me warmly.
I love your outfit, Grace. Where do you shop?
Emily is 3 years younger than Sean. In other words, Emily is 5 years younger than me, still very young, with a great figure and stunning looks. Anyone would say she's cuter than me, yet she complimented me, and I was honestly happy about it. Oh, I bought this online.
What's the shop called? I want to know. By the way, you don't need to be so formal with me. I want to get closer to you soon, Grace.
Thanks. I'll let you know later. Emily's friendly personality made her adorable, like having a younger sister.
Don't go troubling Grace, okay?
Sean seemed exasperated by Emily's friendliness, but I didn't feel troubled at all. Talking with Emily was fun, and Linda watched us with a warm smile. It was such a happy moment. While chatting with Emily and Linda in such a warm and peaceful atmosphere, we suddenly heard a voice from the entrance saying, "I'm home." It was James, my father-in-law, returning home.
You don't have to be so nervous.
Emily reassured me, but I couldn't help sitting up straighter. James is the CEO of a major local company. I don't judge people by their titles, but I've never even met someone who runs a company. From his strong, work-focused image, I assumed he might be intimidating.
Oh, so today's the day Sean's girlfriend is visiting.
As soon as James entered the living room and saw me, he murmured to himself, "Yes, nice to meet you. I'm Grace Anderson." When I introduced myself, James smiled at me.
Don't be so nervous. I'll go get changed, and then we can all chat over dinner.
I felt relieved at his kind words after being so tense. In less than 5 minutes, James returned, and the 5 of us gathered around the dining table. My in-laws all asked me various questions.
By the way, Grace, you're so slim. How do you maintain your body? Don't most people lose their figure by 30?
Her freezing irked me a little, but I decided to let it slide with a smile. I've always been like this. My mom is slim too.
Wow, so jealous.
Emily, this is supposed to be a formal introduction for their engagement. Save those kinds of questions for later.
James, like Sean earlier, seemed exasperated and gently scolded Emily. But I could tell their questions showed genuine interest in me, so I couldn't help but smile.
What's the big deal?
Emily pouted slightly and fell silent. Her expression was so endearing that I chuckled softly, which made James clear his throat as if to reset the mood.
So, what kind of work do you do? I heard you're off on weekends. Are you in public service?
No, I'm working as a caregiver. The once warm atmosphere shifted instantly at my response. James, Linda, and Emily all looked at each other with wide, surprised eyes. The sudden change in mood made me tense up. Did I say something wrong? As I looked toward Sean for support, Linda muttered quietly,
Caregiver, you mean like taking care of old folks, feeding them, changing their diapers?
"Yes, of course." From her tone, it was clear she didn't find my work appealing. As expected, I shrank under the pressure, and Emily, in stark contrast to her earlier demeanor, began looking at me as if I were something filthy.
Wait, seriously? You change diapers for strangers and bathe random old men? That's so gross.
Emily, stop it.
Sean scolded Emily in a low voice. But I was in shock. I never imagined anyone would talk to me like that.
But you know, Sean, you understand what Emily says, don't you?
Understand what? I don't get it at all.
Linda laughed at me in a mocking way. The only solace I had was that Sean was standing by my side. I was barely holding back my tears. The atmosphere grew heavy in an instant. Then James spoke up.
I was told today was supposed to be an engagement introduction.
It is. I want to marry Grace.
Sean, you're my eldest son. You're going to take over our company one day. The wife of a future CEO changing strangers' diapers. That's just unacceptable.
I clenched my fists tightly.
Let me be clear. I'm against this marriage.
Yeah, Sean, you should reconsider marrying Grace.
Caregiving, anyone can do that. You should find someone with a proper education and a real career.
The three of them completely belittled the job that had been both my lifelong dream and my pride. Sean, however, was furious at them.
Do you even realize what you're saying? Are you serious about this?
Sean, are you seriously thinking of marrying Grace? You need to think more about your future.
That's enough. This is pointless. Let's go, Grace.
Sean took my hand and led me outside. Deep down, I knew I should have stood up for myself and defended the work I'm so proud of. But being rejected not only for my career but also for marriage hurt so much more. I was grateful Sean pulled me out of there. I wanted to leave that place as quickly as possible. Even after returning home that day, I couldn't stop thinking about the hurtful words from his family for several days. Maybe calling off the wedding is the best thing for Sean. I finally decided to end things and told Sean about my decision, but he seemed deeply shocked. Furthermore, he sincerely apologized for his family's words and said, "I'll convince them. Please, don't leave me for my sake." After having that discussion twice, I was deeply moved by Sean's words. Meeting someone who cares about me this much is something that likely happens only once in a lifetime. I decided to stand by Sean and work together to gain his family's approval. To start, I asked Sean to arrange another meeting with Linda and Emily, and we visited their home to try to gain their approval. On the appointed day, as we arrived at Sean's home, an unexpected person called out to us.
Sean,
Oh, Auntie Monica, it's been a while.
Sean greeted the middle-aged woman warmly.
Grace, let me introduce you. This is Monica. She lives nearby, and our families have always been close.
"Oh, I see. Nice to meet you. I'm Grace Anderson." I smiled at her, but Monica frowned.
oh, so this is the one.
Her cryptic remark cast a shadow over my expression.
Sean, I know it's not my place to say this, but you really should listen to your parents.
Huh?
So you bathe other people for a living? That's disgusting. It's the talk of the neighborhood. Linda was crying about it, you know.
Monica glared at me. Unable to withstand her piercing gaze, I looked down. According to her, Linda had been complaining to everyone in tears about my profession, but could she really hate me that much? Sean stepped between us and said to Monica,
Auntie Monica, please don't talk like that.
I'm sorry, but I'm just worried. You know I've cared about you since you were little, Sean.
Thanks, but I'll convince my parents. Please tell the neighbors not to worry either.
With that, Sean sent Monica on her way. Although she looked a bit dissatisfied, she seemed to understand that she shouldn't interfere any further and left quietly. To think they disliked me enough to complain to their neighbors. Before entering the house, I muttered this almost to myself. Sean encouraged me with a smile.
That's not true. Mom probably just got overwhelmed when I told her I wanted to get married.
considering how warmly I was welcomed at first. That explanation felt a bit hard to believe. That's what I thought, but I chose to accept Sean's explanation, knowing it came from his kindness. Even after multiple attempts to persuade them, his family never accepted me. But Sean never gave up on marrying me. Finally, he told James, "If you won't allow me to marry Grace, I'll cut ties with you." It was only then, realizing they couldn't afford to lose their eldest son, that his family reluctantly gave their approval. What followed was a whirlwind of meetings between our families and preparations for the wedding. I couldn't bring myself to tell my parents that my in-laws disliked me, and I worried about the possibility of them saying something rude during the family meeting. However, my in-laws were extremely polite and friendly to my parents. I realized they couldn't afford to tarnish their reputation as a CEO and family of status in public. While I thought it was unfair, I also felt relieved that my parents didn't have to worry unnecessarily. We decided to register our marriage on my late grandmother's birthday, as I had hoped. I feel like my grandma brought Sean to me, and she'll be watching over us in the future. Sean respected my feelings and agreed. However, since it was in June, all the wedding venues were already booked. Since Linda said, "I hate the heat after July," we decided to hold the wedding in May before registering the marriage. As planned, the wedding went smoothly on a beautiful May day. Monica, who had been consulted by Linda, also attended. Though it seemed surface level, she congratulated us with a bright smile. My in-laws and Emily caused no trouble and even spoke kindly to me. I was so happy, thinking they had finally accepted me, that it brought me to tears. After the wedding, I felt an overwhelming urge to express my gratitude, so Sean and I headed to his parents' house. Sean said, "You don't have to go out of your way. You haven't forgotten what they said to you, have you? But I just wanted to repair our relationship if possible. James, Linda, and Emily, thank you for today," I said as I greeted the three of them, relaxing in the living room. Then, Linda narrowed her eyes and glared at me sharply. She let out a sigh.
So, I don't see any luggage. What are you planning to do starting tomorrow?
What?
The wedding is over. If you don't move in with us, the neighbors will start talking.
James' words left both Sean and me in shock. We had never planned to live together.
Wait, I never said anything about living together with you.
You're the eldest son. It's your responsibility to take care of this house.
Well, even if you say that.
Sean groaned, holding his head.
We'll live together, won't we, Grace?
What? Emily asked me with a smile. However, it wasn't the warm smile from the day we first met. It was a look that seemed to be scheming something. She probably thought it would be easier to convince me than to argue with Sean.
It'd be a disaster if people found out that the eldest son of the CEO moved out after getting married. And it'd be awkward if they knew we were living apart.
You're right. If it's not an inconvenience. It wasn't just Emily's words. The piercing gazes from my in-laws left me no choice but to respond with a strained smile.
Grace, you don't have to force yourself.
No, I think it's better this way. James, as if it were the most natural thing in the world, accepted my response and looked away from me. On the other hand, Linda inserted herself into our conversation.
In that case, at the very least, bring some essentials with you first.
Yes, I replied softly. The next morning, even though it was the day after our wedding, waking up at my in-laws' house felt strange, and I didn't think I'd slept well. Sean was still asleep. Feeling groggy, I headed to the living room alone, only to pass Emily in the hallway. "Oh, good morning, Emily." Behind Emily, I could see my in-laws.
Silent.
Silent.
But maybe they didn't hear me? Despite clearly noticing me, neither Emily nor my in-laws said a word. "Good morning, James. Good morning, Linda." This time, I greeted my in-laws.
Emily, are you going out today?
Yeah, I won't be home for dinner.
Once again, they ignored my greeting and started a conversation among themselves.
What? You're not staying for dinner, even though it's the first meal cooked by the new bride?
Though she wasn't speaking to me directly, Linda smiled deliberately at Emily.
It's nice for me too, having someone to take care of the housework. I'll be waiting to hear your thoughts on the food later.
Hearing their exchange, I stopped in my tracks, my eyes wide in disbelief. Not only were my greetings ignored, but now they were also shoving all the housework onto me. Yesterday, they talked about appearances and the company, but I'm sure they just wanted someone they could treat like a housekeeper. Otherwise, they wouldn't have forced someone they dislike, like me, to live with them. I was overwhelmed with frustration from the moment I woke up. But if I cried, they would surely throw even harsher words at me. With that thought, I swallowed my tears. Even after nearly a month, their silent treatment toward me continued. Not only that, but Linda and Emily refused to do any housework.
Oh, the dishes aren't washed yet.
They made comments like that, as if blaming me whenever chores were left undone. So I had no choice but to take care of everything myself. Sean repeatedly asked his family to reconsider how they were treating me, but nothing changed as time went on. One day, as I was nearing my physical and emotional limits from balancing work and housework, something happened. James collapsed at work and was rushed to the hospital. When I got the call from Sean, I left work early and hurried to the hospital. I couldn't stop thinking about how my beloved grandmother had suddenly collapsed and never came back. The memory left me feeling incredibly anxious. At the hospital, I found Linda and immediately called out to her. "Linda, how is James doing?"
Silent.
To my disbelief, Linda continued ignoring me even in this situation. Emily did the same, leaving me utterly stunned. About 5 minutes after I arrived at the hospital, Sean arrived, only to be met with Linda and Emily crying hysterically.
Sean, your dad is in surgery right now.
Surgery? What happened?
It seems like he had a stroke.
Sean and I could do nothing but pray for James' surgery to end successfully. Fortunately, James' life was saved. However, according to the doctor, he would no longer be able to move his body freely. That evening, we returned home. Linda, Emily, and even Sean were at a loss for words, filled with despair over what lay ahead. James was still young and an active CEO. Everyone was understandably anxious. Amidst the heavy silence, Emily spoke up.
Well, we'll need to think about what comes next. But luckily, we have Grace. So there's no need to worry about caregiving.
Her words left me wide-eyed. Sean had the same dumbfounded expression, his mouth agape.
What's with those faces? You're both worried about Dad too, aren't you?
After all the time she had mocked my profession and ignored me, how could she even have the nerve to say such a thing? I was overwhelmed with disbelief. Rushing to the hospital out of concern for James and agreeing to take on caregiving were two completely different things. I had endured countless remarks and slights up until now, but this statement nearly broke my patience.
Well, anyway, today must have been exhausting, right? Why don't you take a bath and get some rest?
Perhaps Linda had noticed from our expressions that neither Sean nor I agreed with what had just been said. Linda hurriedly called out to us. But without responding, we returned to our room. The next day, coincidentally, was my grandmother's birthday. According to our original plan, this was the day we would officially submit our marriage license and start living together as a couple in our newly prepared home. It felt like a lifeline. If I stayed in my in-laws' house any longer, I would end up living like a servant. Without a word, we moved into our new home. As expected, Linda noticed that our room was completely empty and called Sean multiple times.
Sean, where are you? The room is empty.
Didn't I tell you we were getting married today? We had already rented a place, so we moved out.
Reluctantly answering the phone, Sean calmly explained the situation to Linda. While we were unpacking, his phone was on speaker, and we could hear Linda's furious voice.
What are you talking about? How could you do this at such a difficult time? Grace was supposed to take care of James.
That's exactly why we moved out.
Sean laughed, but Linda became even more enraged on the other end of the line.
What did you just say? Your family, and you're running away.
If you all had treated Grace kindly, we could have stayed and lived together. But no matter how many times I talked to you, nothing changed. You didn't accept Grace as part of the family. That's on you, Mom, Dad, and Emily.
That's not what I...
Sean remained calm, stating his case with precision.
And let's not forget how you all mocked Grace's job. Now that you need her, suddenly you called her Grace. Aren't you embarrassed?
Linda gradually found herself unable to argue back, and her voice grew quieter on the other end of the phone.
The company isn't just about Dad or the family. It's also about the employees and their families. I'll take over and help run the company, but the issues in your house, you all can deal with those yourselves.
That's...
Grace won't be involved with you anymore, so make sure you keep that in mind, okay?
Sean cheerfully ended the call. His kindness made me happy.
I'm sorry I couldn't protect you before.
Sean turned to me and apologized to me again. But he had spoken with his family countless times for my sake. Besides, part of the blame lay with me for not being able to firmly refuse living with them in the first place. Even so, with him clearly declaring our separation from his family, I felt once again that marrying him was the right decision. After that day, both Emily and Linda began contacting Sean and me repeatedly. When we didn't respond, they even showed up at Sean's office. Since we had kept the location of our new home a secret from his family, they couldn't come to our house, but Sean was frustrated and overwhelmed by Linda and Emily's behavior.
My dad is getting discharged from the hospital soon. That's why they're trying to bring you back to the house.
Sean vented to me. While I didn't know much about James' current condition, I was appalled that instead of taking responsibility themselves, they were so desperate to find me. Fortunately, they never discovered where we lived, and Sean and I continued to live peacefully. But about a month later, something completely unexpected happened. James started attending the facility where I worked.
Grace, take good care of James, okay?
This should have been the plan from the beginning.
Linda and Emily, who came to drop James off, left him in his wheelchair as if handing him off to me. Apparently, he would be attending the facility twice a week for day services. To be honest, I was shocked they would go this far.
Grace, I want to watch TV.
However, James' behavior at the facility was beyond inappropriate. It's not time for TV right now. Recreation activities will start shortly.
Recreation? With those ordinary people? Don't insult me like that.
He refused to follow the facility's schedule and often made derogatory comments about the other residents. When other staff members tried to assist him, he would say, "I don't want anyone else helping me." Call my daughter-in-law, treating me as if I were his personal caregiver. This behavior continued for about 3 months, during which complaints from other residents and their families flooded in. After discussions with the manager and other staff, James was banned from the facility.
You're kicking out someone with a disability.
I let my daughter-in-law work here, and now I'm the one banned. What's going on?
Linda and James protested the ban, but the facility, as a company, handled the situation appropriately. From the beginning, it was clearly stated in the attendance contract that failure to follow the facility's rules would result in termination of the agreement. It wasn't as though James was abandoned by us unilaterally. However, no matter what we said, his family refused to accept it and began spreading negative rumors about the facility. On social media, they used my real name, writing things like, "This facility has Grace Thomas, a staff member who abandons her father-in-law."
This is the worst facility. They won't accommodate any requests.
Such phrases were even written in the facility's online reviews. Linda and Emily even used their real names to post these accusations, showing they had no remorse. I consulted with Sean, and he spoke to his family about it, but Linda and Emily just doubled down.
We're not lying, are we?
I decided to discuss my in-laws' behavior with the facility and consult with a lawyer. The female lawyer handling my case listened to me attentively and said, "This is a clear case of defamation. You can pursue criminal charges."
I want them to reflect on what they've done to you, Grace. But first, let's resolve the issue concerning the facility.
Trusting her expertise, the company decided to file a claim for damages. Emily and Linda visited the lawyer's office for a meeting. I was allowed to be present as well, but neither of them seemed to take the lawsuit seriously.
Isn't this over the top? We were just telling the truth.
Isn't that what reviews are for? If you sue over bad reviews, it defeats the purpose of having them in the first place.
As expected, they showed no remorse whatsoever.
Grace is family, after all. Isn't it your job to protect us?
They even tried to shift the blame for the lawsuit onto me. Just as I was about to respond, The lawyer spoke on my behalf.
We've already heard from Grace, of course. That's why we filed this claim for damages against you. You posted multiple reviews, didn't you? This clearly constitutes harassment.
That was to make sure no one got fooled.
Don't try to justify yourself. Who caused trouble for the facility and Grace in the first place?
The liar's sharp rebuke left Linda and Emily looking visibly uncomfortable.
Fine, we'll pay. Is that what you want?
Emily said curtly. Given that they're from a family that runs a business, it's likely they can afford it. Although I was irritated by their tone, I was relieved that the claim for damages was accepted. About 2 weeks later, while I was grocery shopping, I ran into Monica.
So, you moved out?
Monica addressed me in an accusatory tone. For a moment, I hesitated, but I didn't want to be as timid as I was before. Instead, I smiled brightly. Yes, we ended the co-living arrangement.
Sean is the eldest son, you know? And I heard because of you, they had to pay money to some shady facility.
Well, I politely explained to Monica. I told her how James had behaved arrogantly at the facility where I worked, leading to him being banned, which then resulted in harassment from the family. I also clarified that it wasn't about taking money, but a legitimate claim for damages through proper procedures. Initially skeptical, Monica's eyes widened as she listened to my explanation. And then she said this.
You're a caregiver?
I was taken aback, confused by her question. Monica had previously mocked my profession based on what Linda had told her. Well, yes.
Well, Linda said you had a disgusting job giving baths to strangers, so I assumed you worked in nightlife or something. That's what everyone thinks.
What? My eyes widened in shock as Monica revealed this. Apparently, Linda had been telling the neighbors that I worked in nightlife, spreading completely false rumors about me. That explained why Monica had been so cold toward me when we first met.
Being a caregiver is such a wonderful and respectable job. Why would Linda say something like that?
Well, I do help people bathe and provide personal care. She said it's unacceptable for the wife of a future CEO to be doing those things for others. Hearing my words, Monica turned pale, clearly shocked.
I had no idea. I'm so sorry for being so cold to you.
It's fine. I'm just glad you understand now. While Linda technically didn't lie, the way she twisted her words was misleading. It's easy to see how people could misunderstand. Monica looked at me with a genuinely apologetic expression.
I'll clear things up with the neighbors. It turns out we were all misled by Linda. Honestly, you made the right choice to leave that house. Best wishes to you and Sean.
Though I found her a bit opportunistic, her frankness made me smile. Thank you. I thanked her with a smile and parted ways. Thanks to Monica, word about my in-laws' behavior and harassment quickly spread among the neighbors.
What did you tell the neighbors?
Linda sent me an angry message, so I simply replied. I just told them the truth. With rumors circulating among the neighbors, Linda was likely panicking by now. At the same time, Sean seemed troubled by something. He often came home late from work and always looked exhausted. Becoming the CEO must have been taking a toll on him, One day, Sean spoke up, as if he had finally made up his mind.
It seems my dad was embezzling from the company.
What? It had been less than 6 months since Sean became CEO. However, while investigating the company's finances due to some irregularities, he discovered an embezzlement of $300,000. Caught between his family and the company, Sean had been struggling alone. When I gently patted his back, he looked up at me.
The fact is, my dad betrayed the company and its employees. I just can't let that slide.
It was clear he had decided to file criminal charges. I resolved to support the conclusion Sean had reached. The legal process proceeded smoothly afterward. However, James refused to admit his guilt, and the case went to trial.
How could you treat your disabled father like this?
You ungrateful son, trying to steal the company.
During the trial, Linda and Emily hurled insults from the gallery.
You don't deserve to be CEO.
Even James, in a frail and weak voice, spoke words that clearly rejected Sean. While I was furious at how his family was treating Sean, who was already physically and emotionally drained, I held back and continued to support him. In the end, James was sentenced to 3 years in prison. He was also ordered to repay the $300,000 to the company.
It's all your fault. You've ruined our family.
Emily broke down in tears. Linda glared at Sean, her eyes red with anger. James remained silent, keeping his eyes shut. Sean must have been hurt too, but he hadn't done anything wrong. I was proud of Sean for uncovering the wrongdoing and bringing it to light.
I didn't do anything wrong, but I can't face the employees anymore.
In the end, Sean decided to step down from the company.
Even Dad said I'm not fit to be CEO.
If that's your decision, I won't argue. I decided to respect Sean's decision, but not everyone felt the same way.
Sir, it's a mistake for you to resign. Please don't leave.
Hearing rumors of Sean's resignation, an employee came directly to him, pleading for him to stay. And it wasn't just one person. As the rumors spread, more and more people expressed their support, and even senior executives urged Sean to stay, saying, "The former CEO and the current CEO are two different people. You don't need to bear the burden of your father's crimes. You are now an indispensable part of this company." Encouraged by their words, Sean resolved to stay and protect the company and its employees, no matter how difficult it would be. I believed in Sean, the man who had protected me, and I was confident he would uphold his promise. While James was serving his sentence, his family renovated their home to make it suitable for caregiving. Between the damages paid to the facility, restitution for the embezzlement, and the home renovations, Sean's family had to pay a significant amount of money all at once. According to Sean, they hardly have any money left. As proof, Linda frequently sends letters to Sean asking for help, but he consistently refuses. 3 years later, I ran into Monica again at the grocery store. James had been released from prison and was now being cared for by Linda and Emily at home.
Apparently, they have home caregivers coming by occasionally, but the staff keeps changing. I bet they're driving them away with insults.
Monica's words seemed oddly convincing, and I couldn't help but smile wryly. The neighbors had also distanced themselves from Sean's family.
People finally realized it's best to stay away from folks like that.
Monica said with a laugh. Sean's family hadn't just lost their money, they'd lost the trust of the community. This was the result of looking down on others. How pitiful. Meanwhile, Sean was thriving at work. The company experienced steady growth, and the turnover rate dropped significantly. By holding his own father accountable, Sean was able to purge the company of its toxic elements, and it has now become a highly sought-after employer with a competitive recruitment rate for new graduates. Last month, I gave birth to our first child. In a miraculous twist, our baby girl was born on our wedding anniversary, which also happens to be the birthday of my beloved grandmother. I'm currently on maternity leave, navigating the challenges of motherhood. There are times when things don't go as planned, and I feel discouraged. But every time I see my daughter smile, I'm somehow reminded of my grandmother and feel encouraged. I'm sure my grandmother is watching over us.
Your grandma must be looking out for us.
Sean said when our daughter was born. So I'm certain it's not just in my imagination. No matter what lies ahead, I know we'll be okay. Because my beloved grandmother will always be by my side.